Hey guys, Kate here with Fusion 3. We're going to do a quick video on how to get the printhead out of F200. This is just easier to do as a video versus written instruction. So let's get started. Before we get started, let's look at some of the tools we might need. I've got a 2.5 millimeter straight end, or sorry, that's the ball end. I've got a 2.5 millimeter straight end. I've got a 2 millimeter straight end, a 1.5 straight end, needle nose pliers, nippers, a black stick, a brass bristle brush, and a small flat-bladed screwdriver. We may not need all these, but depending on what you encounter, making this video with the context if you've got an issue with your printhead or trying to fix it, you may need all these things. The first step we're going to do is we're not going to take anything off. We're going to manually heat the printhead to, depending on the material you've been running, somewhere between 235 and 275. I'll pick 255. We're going to let it heat up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scrub the bottom of the printhead with this brass bristle brush. Once your printhead is up to temperature, you're going to take this brush and you're just going to scrub I'm going to say vigorously, but also gently. So you don't want to push into this because you'll deform the bristles and they'll splay out. And number one, that's less effective. And number two, you might short something electrically doing that. So it's light pressure into the printhead, but vigorous scrubbing back and forth. And you can see I've already got the hot section of this one loose because this is not the first time I've gone through this. I did another take and then realized I forgot to do this part. So pretend your hot side is still all tight and bolted together. We're going to do a few different directions here to make sure we get all of the angles. Our objective in doing this is to make it easier to get the printhead apart. So molten filament, when it hardens, is like glue. It's glued this hot section together. So it's going to be very difficult to get the tube out. It's going to be very difficult to get the electrical components out. So by cleaning this up, we make our job in the future easier. Okay, and that's about all I'm going to do there. I'm going to turn the heaters off. And then I'm going to turn the blower on as well to help speed up the cool down process. And we're going to wait. You do not proceed until the printhead is cold, because right now it's a major burn risk. If you go in there and try to manipulate something, you could burn yourself quite badly. Once your printhead is down to around 60 Celsius or colder, you can shut your printer off. And we can proceed with actually taking the printhead apart. You're going to use your 2.5 millimeter. Doesn't matter if the ball end or straight end at this point. Loosen these two. Oh, apparently I forgot to tighten those as well. You're going to take this off. Now your printer is going to have a 3-wire blower here instead of a 2-wire, but that doesn't really matter. Your wires may be shorter or longer, also doesn't matter. Okay, so the printhead is captured by these two wedges on the front and the back. So there's no screws that actually hold it into the toolhead assembly. It's just wedged in there. And when we tighten those two front toolhead housing screws, what they're doing is they're tightening this wedge, make sure I'm in frame, yep, and they're clamping the printhead in place. And there's a matching wedge machined into this base block here on the rear side. So I'm going to pull down on the front, and then I'm just going to pull it forward. Now, if you've got a filament jam, your filament may be stuck in this tube, and in order to do what I just did, you'll have to loosen your idler bar and then just pull the filament down with the printhead. Usually in that case, I'll just cut it off with my nippers and extract the tube and the filament stuck in it in one piece. Okay, so next thing you're going to do is you're going to loosen your two hot side screws here. I like to, at this point, get the printhead completely off the printer to work on it, so you can see I've already got those loose, and I'm going to pull the sensor out. I'm going to pull the heater cartridge out. Now we're going to take a timeout here. Even though we've scrubbed the printhead, sometimes you're still going to find that these components are frozen in place. Sometimes if I'm just replacing a tube and everything looks okay and I'm pretty sure that's the source of my issue, I'll do that without removing these components, and I'll just kind of hold everything here. Now, if I want to get the printhead off and let's say I've had a print come loose from the bed and there's a big ball of filament on the end of this or something, what I'll do in that case is turn the printer back on, heat it up, and be gently tugging on these. And as soon as they come loose, which is going to be, depending on your material, somewhere between 85 and 120 Celsius, as soon as they come loose, shut it all off again. Um, the sensor in particular, these wires are fairly fragile, so you want to be gentle with them. Don't pull on them, don't tug them, don't bend them. They're a fiberglass insulation, so they're relatively stiff, which means they don't like being bent. What else do I need to tell you? Generally, I leave these connected to the toolboard just because getting into the wiring in the backside is kind of a pain, and I really don't. I would recommend you touch that as little as possible. At this point, if you're trying to recover a filament jam, I would probably trim this off and then extract it back up through the system. If you can't get it back through the system, that's your clue that your actual issue is somewhere up in here versus your print head. Okay, so we've got our print head off, and you can see that the wedge features I was talking about here and here. Make sure these mating surfaces are in good shape. I've seen people's print heads where they had the print head installed incorrectly, and they've actually had something chew into the material here, which this is a register, not only does the wedge register, but the top piece of this vertical face here is used to mechanically register the head. So if you've got damage here, and you can see this one's got, if I can get this to work on video, it's got some tooling marks. Tooling marks are okay, but if you've got divots, bumps, material missing or deformed, that's a problem. Okay, so to take the tube out of an anvil print head, we've already got our hot side screws loose. And I'm using a straight end for this because you want the leverage that you get from the straight end versus the ball end. The ball end has smaller contact area for a given, are you gonna focus, please? For a given screw. And so they're more inclined to round out the screw head. And these are screws that we want very tight. And also if they round out, they're a huge pain to fix. So I always like the straight end drives for these steps. Okay, so my hot side screws are loose. I'm going to loosen my 4 cold side screws. I'm loosening, I'm not removing. Okay, now, if we've cleaned the bottom of our print head off well enough, I can just pop it on the table and you see the tube comes out right here. You know what, I actually think these extra lights are not doing me favors. Let's turn some of these off. Okay. So you see I can just pull the tube out. Okay, and you see it kind of gets stuck there. That's because I've got carbon buildup on the bit that sticks out. So we'll just loosen our clamp a little more and maybe a little more. This one's really dirty. There we go. Okay, so there's our old tube. And you can see that, yeah, I do have some carbon buildup there. If you would focus, there we go. Okay. Now, very important note. We have 2 styles of anvil tubes in circulation right now. The one on your left is the old style, and it's got a very slight flare at the top. You can see that. The one on your right is a new style, and that has a shoulder. Both of these are compatible with all of our anvil print heads, both for F200 and Edge. The only difference is that how they're manufactured and the way they're installed. So, the old style, that flare, I'm just going to drop this in here. Okay. Now you see my clamp is nice and loose. And you see that you can over-insert that into the top of the print head. That is too far in. So what you're going to do is back it out just a skosh. I'm sorry, I need to be in frame. Tighten your top 2 screws until they bottom out and then reverse them like a 1/16 of a turn, just ever so slightly. What that's going to do is it's going to mechanically prevent us from overdriving the tube into the print head. Just like that. So you see, that's about what you want to see. I think the spec is like 1.25 to 1.5 millimeters sticking out. And then on the bottom side, that's what it should look like. Then you're going to tighten your 4 screws, sorry. You're going to tighten your cold side screws. These have to stay loose because we got to put the heater and sensor back in. Okay, but that's what that should look like. I'll do the other thing first and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to take that one out. The new style is much easier to insert because they're impossible to overdrive. They literally that shoulder will bottom out, and that's as far as it's going to go. So these are a little bit easier to install. There's a, we'll talk about that in a second as well. Now you notice what I'm doing when I tighten these screws is I'm shifting this clamp piece up. You want to make sure that all of your air holes are aligned. And in this case, I have to shift this one up to get it to line up correctly. So tighten, 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 tighten. And these are just finger tight right now because I'm just showing you. And then what you want to do is you come back and you want to tighten them up, I don't know, 5 to 10 inch-pounds or something, fairly firm. Okay, a couple other things of note here. The reason I always tell people don't take the cold side completely apart is that this piece is ever so slightly asymmetrical. The holes, my airflow holes, are not the same distance top and bottom. And if you take this completely out, it's very easy to put it in upside down because all your mounting holes still line up. And now your airflow holes are all screwed up because you've got this partial overlap. And so you're restricting the airflow. Not only are you restricting the airflow, but in the most critical area, which is right next to the tube. So don't take that out unless you have to. And if you do, make sure that the row with the holes closer to the edge is on the bottom, just like that. Okay, so I've got my replacement tube installed. In this case, it's actually the one I just took out because it was fairly new. Your next step, actually, let me show you some things. This stuff, trim that off, don't stick it back in. Normally you're going to do this with the filament unloaded if you can. So you're only doing that if it's stuck. Okay, I'm going to leave just a little pigtail sticking out, I think, and we'll see if this works for us. The top of the tube, I'm way off frame, okay. Top of the tube sticks out, right? So there's a pocket in the bottom of this plate where the top of the tube sticks. And that bit of filament sticking out can help us find it. But first things first, stick your sensor and your heater cartridge back in. And I'm kicking the camera around, sorry about that. Okay. So you want to make sure both of these are fully inserted. If they stick out partially like this, that's bad. Don't do that. Bad things will happen. Stuff won't work right. They have to be fully inserted. So I hold them down, tighten these screws just finger tight to hold them. If you change tubes a lot, you may want to put a bit of high temperature and automotive anti-seize on these two hot side screws. That can help the threads last a little bit longer and just make things smoother. The first time you run it after doing that, it's going to smell like hell, but it's not going to hurt anything. And just a little bit of anti-seize. Okay, so I've got my heater and sensor in there, and you can see they're both fully inserted, which is what we want. I'll go ahead and tighten those down. Again, 5 to 10 inch-pounds, fairly firm. I'm going to make sure all my other screws are tight. Okay, now let's get to the tricky part. The tricky part is I don't want to do it this way. Forget what I said earlier. You want your filament totally unloaded. Don't do this with filament loaded. It's a huge pain in the ass. So I'm just going to pull that back. Okay, so no filament loaded. Makes life more difficult. I'm going to take my print head. I'm going to engage the rear wedge. So see where I am? I'm up against my cold side fan duct. I've got the rear wedge engaged, and I kind of rotate up into place. Now, a couple caveats. If you are using our shouldered tubes instead of the flared ones, the fit is going to be tighter. You may get to here and find you have to push fairly firmly to get it up into the pocket. That's okay. If you can't get it into the pocket at all, that's not okay. A couple other points. Usually, there's enough friction at this point to keep the print head right here. That makes reassembly easier. This one's going to be, okay, it should do that. Nice and pretty. A couple things you can check for here. I'm going to hold this because I'm going to touch it. I've got a nice even 0 to very small gap right here. The front edge of my print head, the front face, is aligned with the edge of my cold side duct. and everything is level across here. My hot side is fairly parallel with everything else, okay? If you got it sitting like this, that's no good. Your rear wedge is not engaged. If you've got it sitting like, I don't know, like that, that's no good either. Has to sit like this. If you don't get this installed correctly, the machine may run. It'll power on. It may go through the bed leveling and probing process just fine, but when you actually go to print, you're either not going to be able to get filament through it, or it's just going to print like very bad output. I had a customer with that issue the other day, where it would just print really badly because there was a ton of friction in the filament path. Okay, you're going to take your front housing. One of the tricky points here is you don't want these wires between the blower body here and the front face of your filament monitor. There's limited clearance there, and if the wires are in the way, it won't really go together correctly. If you just did what I did and loosened your idler bar, make sure you tighten that back up so fully tight. And we're going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half turns, which is 2.5 full turns. Okay, I'm going to make sure my wires are out of the way. Now look at what I'm doing here. I'm making sure I'm lined up all around. And I'm going to push it until I feel those latches engage on the top. Now, if your print head drops out easily, it's fairly common for you to get to this point and then notice that the print head is not actually, it's below that front wedge. So let me try to get the camera in there and show you what it should look like here. Okay, now my cooling air ducts on this one are a little chewed up because, like I said, this is an old printer, but what you're looking for here is that your hot side is parallel, should be parallel with your duct if it's not chewed up, and it should be parallel with this face on your front housing. So everything's nice and parallel here. I'm installed correctly. If you see it tilted down in the front like this, that is not installed correctly. Take it apart, try it again. This is what it should look like, and that's approximately what your vertical clearances should look like as well, as far as the relation of the hot side. I'm a little bit close. The relation of where the hot side is relative to the cooling ducts and relative to the front housing. Okay, before I forget, the other thing you're going to check at this point, make sure that your mate between your front and rear housing is nice and clean. Even gap or no gap all around. Let me show you the top face. So I've got a nice gap there. And then same thing over here, you're just looking for that nice even gap all around. Last step, super simple but super important, tighten these two front screws again. If you forget to tighten them, which I have, bad things happen. Eventually the force of the extrusion will force the printhead out, and the printhead will then be dangling below your tool head, and it'll be making a mess, and it's horrible. So please don't forget to tighten those screws, and those are just finger tight plus a little bit. Okay, and that's basically it. From here, if you want to function check the system, run a load filament, make sure it loads okay. If you're running anything weird like flexibles, I would start with a PLA or an ABS or something, just to baseline the system before you get into potentially exotic filament specific issues. But that's pretty much it.